Monday, we finished lab exercise 4. I asked you to work on the dynamic array header file. But also I say here you may not really finish your dynamic array. Because one thing is, even we do have our default constructor, copy constructor, assignment operator. However, the capacity setter function, you didn't know how to implement that yet. And also after I show you how to modify the capacity setter function, the operator setter function may need to make the change too. So that's why what we're missing out from lab exercise 4, we will complete to finish that today. So I will talk about how to implement capacity setter function and how to modify the operator setter function. The first thing, let's take a look at the operator on the capacity setter function. So just like earlier we say, from now on we can have our dynamic array. You can specify your data type and you can decide your capacity and passing in the constructor. So for example, now we create an array data type is int. Then I pass in the capacity is 100. So since this week, we will do the dynamic array. So we have the flexibility. I want to change the size for the A array. I should be able to change that. Right, so that's our capacity setter function. So capacity setter function, you can pass in your new capacity. So then we will enlarge our capacity for the array A from 100 to 200. So this capacity setter function has one parameter. So this parameter will be the new capacity. Capacity setter function actually have the same name as the getter function. But capacity setter function return type is void because we don't return anything. Instead, I need to have the new capacity as the passing parameter. So that's why I look at our class definition again. So you can see here, for you have your capacity getter function from the last week and the past 2 weeks. You have the return value is the current capacity. That's a getter function. But in the dynamic array, we will have another setter function with the same function name. But this setter function is the overloaded function. So then you have the signature passing the argument. So then we have nothing to return. So that's our setter function. So after we know our setter function signature, the other question is how should we implement that? So we should know, in order to enlarge the capacity from 100 to 200, right, actually the array we cannot just really extend from 100 to 200, right? Instead, actually we need to recreate another array. So that dynamic array will be 200 capacity. So then they don't have any initial value. So from the old capacity 100, we don't know what they contain, but we need to copy over from 0 to 99, the first 100 element to our new capacity 200. And the rest of that, we should assign the default value. So in the other hand, you will see the new capacity setter function has to allocate a new array. I need to copy the contents. So copy the contents means I need to copy the old contents from the original array. So then after I finish the copy, I should deallocate the original array. Then reassign the new array through our pointer in our data attribute. So here is the algorithm for the capacity setter function. So the first thing, we need to allocate a new array with the new capacity. Then we stored the memory location to a temporary pointer. because remember, all our array is dynamic array. So then we need to have a for loop to copy over the existing array capacity. Then we will copy the content. Then we have another for loop to add the new value to the default value for the extended location. So then we need to delete, that means deallocate the original array. Then we will assign the temporary pointer value to the private data member pointer. So then set the private data member capacity to the new capacity. So that's our algorithm, how we will implement that. So before I show you how to implement that, on the other hand, I want you to see the step by step to see is that okay, and also can you try to implement that by yourself first before we move into write the program. So that's our template array, dynamic array declaration. So that's work on the capacity setter function. So one thing here, because I want to put in the one screen, so that's why I have the implementation right after that. Okay, so that's why here I copy over the whole thing. So we have the template function as well. So then our class name is template, is dynamic array. So then don't forget our capacity setter function return type is void. So that's a template function. So then we have our class name associated with the setter function. So here I copy over from the prototype. Okay, so we don't have any return value. Okay, so here, right, so the capacity setter function, I need to have a parameter passed. So that's why the same thing, that's called this. So you can see this cap actually is a new cap. The new value we assign in the parameter. So after we have the capacity right, so the first thing you see here, we create a new array. So then the next one, we need to copy the old content. So we copy the old content, that's why here we have our for loop. So I equal to 0. But here our I last is this capacity. In our example, we want to expand the capacity from 100 to 200, right? So that's why we need to copy over the first 100. So the first 100 actually is the initial, the original capacity. So then, so here we're using our original array, we refer by values. So that's why here, this temp array, we access by the temp. So this, you see, that's the new array we want to create. We need to copy from the old content. So after you copy from the old content, right? So then, but here you see that's the old content we copy. But from capacity 100 extend to 200, we still have the rest of that. So that's why for your int, I actually start from this cap. So this I will be smaller than our new cap. So then actually it's just assign the initial value for the rest of the element. So then you see still is temp I. Okay, so equal to the default value. The default value is the default constructor for T. So that's what we call, you see here is copy the old content. So this one is the rest of that we need to assign the default value. So then we complete the copy and we get this template array ready. Actually, that's the new array. So now, so after we done, so now we need to delete. See here, after we done, we can delete our old array. We delete the old memory we create from the constructor. So now after we delete, so now I can assign. So that's now you see here, after we copy over the data, then you see we're ready, so we can delete the old original array. So then our original array data member value, we will assign the pointer to where the new array we prepared. So then after we done, you see here, don't forget now your capacity should be the new capacity. So then you see, do you have question for this one? If you are okay with that, actually this situation is we consider they are from capacity 100 to 200. I can enlarge the capacity. But sometimes when you create your capacity is 100, right? How about I want to resize from 100 to 50 only? So that's why here you see sometimes we will enlarge our capacity, but sometimes we will shrink our capacity. So that's why here we talk about this one. So actually the item 2, you need to compute a limit for the copying for loop as the last of the old and the new capacity. So that means here is, you see, if you only have 50, right? You from 100 to 250, I only need to copy the first 50. So that's why here we need to make a change for the for loop we will copy. So that's why before we copy the old content, actually let's add one more local variable we call limit. So this limit we just assign to the new capacity. But this situation is if the new cap is less than the original cap. So then actually this new cap is smaller, right? So we take the small one. Otherwise, we take the old one. So on the other hand, if this capacity is smaller, I copy the whole thing. But if we try to have the new capacity is smaller than this cap, you see here, that's why we need to change the condition in our two for loop. Instead using this cap before, we change to the limit. So we can see here which one is smaller. I just need to copy over until then. So the same thing, this one you see here, if I try to shrink the array, then actually if under limit, then you see if the limit is new cap, so then actually I possibly don't need this. Okay, so then here after we done, this one is our capacity setter function. So then we add the item 2. We need to find which one is smaller. So then I'm using that smaller to copy over the value because we need to consider capacity. Sometimes you will be enlarge, but sometimes you will be shrink. So that's capacity setter function. So that's finish our dynamic array. So I didn't talk about the operator getter and setter function. So now let's review that again. So about our operator getter function, so that one is still okay. You see, if that getter, then if the index is invalid, we return either dummy or the T. Okay, so here be careful. This one actually from before, actually I didn't show before, we only do the T, right? So if that's the only T, return type is T, I just return the T capacity. So not capacity, T default value. But one thing is actually if that's the setter function, you see the getter function is the same as before, but setter function is a little different. Setter function before, if index less than 0, that's invalid, right? Right, so for this situation, I still return dummy. But now, if index is greater or equal to the cap, that means I want to have the index is greater than my current capacity, right? So now actually before we return dummy, but now we cannot because we are dynamic array. So even the index is greater than the cap, then we should just modify our capacity. So that's why if user enter the index is greater than our current capacity, we should call the capacity setter function. So we double the capacity. So then we will return the value index. So that's a change for the operator setter function.